Okay, so to begin with, you should have your branch, and the branch should be the branch that you chose with the V. What you're going to do now is take your fabric and cut it so that you can tear it into strips. Basically the idea is just to take and cut it like this and then tear it. Okay, so you should actually have it so that it's torn into different strips, and I've just got a whole bunch of strips here that I'm going to use because they represent fall. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my doll and my doll form actually, and I'm just going to start wrapping. You can actually use glue, but it's really not that important because you're going to be wrapping it several times with different things. So you start wrapping, and you can just kind of wrap it, you know, any way you want, because you're going to be decorating the end too with some fibers. So if you feel like you want to use a little bit of glue, then you can use tacky glue. But what I do is I just overlap the strips so that I can just kind of overlap the strips. And you can twist the strips. If you want to twist the strips, you can actually twist it so that they are overlapping like this. Okay. So if you want to do that, you can do that too. Make sure though that all the ends are overlapped, and overlap it to the top part of the V, and again take another strip of another kind of fabric and overlap that, and then go inside the V and around the V like that, and then back, and just keep overlapping. Okay, so you just want to really, what you want to do is cover the branch with the fabric, and you know, you can do it pretty much any way you want. You can use glue if it's easier, that's fine. If you don't want to use glue, you can just overlap your fabric. And you're making the body form, but what you're doing is you're making the body form with the branch underneath and the fabric over it. So you're kind of creating kind of a clothing, I guess you could call it that, the clothing for the doll. And then if you want, you can also take some of your fiber and overlap some of that too over the fabric, and you're just really again just overlapping your fiber. So you just keep overlapping, and you can do it any way you want. So I'm just showing you just a couple of ways of doing it. So you keep doing that, and then when you get up to the top, you cut it and overlap it. Again, just keep overlapping. That's another way of securing your fabric without gluing. You don't really need to use glue, except maybe when you start working with the embellishments. So that's one way of doing it. Now the other way of doing it is kind of like covering your body form and then gluing some other shapes over it. If you want to do that, you can also do that. I've done actually different things in my dolls, really, and you know, you can experiment. Once you get this idea of what you're doing with the basics, you can come back and change it. and work any way you want. You're making a really nice kind of a cocoon-like body form to start with. And again, using your fibers is another way of, and you know, you can also use yarn. You don't have to use special fibers. You can just use ribbon or yarn or even really, really thin pieces of fabric to work with your body form. So the idea is just to create the body, and then you're going to start working on the rest of the arms. And so just randomly wrap, just keep wrapping. And when you get up to the top, you can start putting more fiber or more fabric on your doll, on your form. And if you've got these little tiny pieces here, before you finish, you can, you know, you can glue those down and then start your embellishments. And it's easier to start with the fabric, hold the fabric down, and then wrap. And I like a pretty thick body form, so I keep wrapping fabric and fibers around it. And like I say, you can actually use glue too, but I'm not going to use glue right now. So I'm just going to keep wrapping, and make sure you're overlapping the fabric as well as the fibers, and just, you know, go back and forth and wrap and twist and wrap and twist, and just keep going. Okay, so rather than going through this whole thing, I'm going to show you the next part of the process. So I'm going to turn the video off and make sure that this is recording right and you're seeing the things that that I'm doing, and go to the next step. Okay. So you got the idea of the wrapping and the overlapping, right? Okay, I'm gonna like secure all this down and then come back. You can also start by kind of like wrapping and tying, you know, tying off your pieces so that you can kind of start over in another area doing your wrapping. I think also it's really important that you have all of your material on the table and ready, because and also don't cut all the strands real short, because you're going to be gluing them down. And also it's kind of nice to have some pieces here and there. Remember, this is a wise woman doll, so it's not supposed to be perfect. It's supposed to be based on something that's real primitive and also handmade. Okay, so I'll be back in just a couple minutes, and we will go to the next step. Okay, I noticed when I checked the video that you really weren't seeing what I was doing. So I'm going to try this again, but I do want to show you kind of an example of what we were doing. Really, the idea is just to take different things, wrapping and overlapping the fabric, the fibers, until you build a body form. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how to do the same thing I was doing on the body on the arm. So hopefully you'll be able to see that. Now, this time I did get some glue, and what I use is tacky glue, but any glue that's, you know, fairly thick will work. You don't need really super thick glue because, you know, when you get to going to, you know, do the embellishments, that's when you'll need this for the embellishments. But just in case you want to actually use glue, I have brought it out, and you probably should use, I either use a toothpick or like a knife or something that is not a brush, because you're not going to use, you're going to use this glue fairly thick, and a brush gets real gooky, you know, after a while. So, you know, McDonald's knife or a painter's knife or a toothpick works really great. So I'm going to keep that here just in case I want to use that as I go. So the next thing we're going to do is what we're going to do is going to actually take the fabric that we were cutting into strips, and this time you're going to tear them into smaller strips because it'll be easier to do the arms. So just take your scissors and, you know, do some smaller strips. You know, smaller strips may require actually cutting, but if it's cotton fabric, and it doesn't have to be perfect strips either. In fact, the thing that is really cool is when it's not perfect, when it's got like little pieces of thread and all kinds of stuff on it too at the same time. Because remember, this is a doll based on the wise woman and the primitive aspect of the wise woman. So, you know, just cut some smaller strips. You can even do, you know, like thinner strips, smaller strips. They don't even have to be perfect strips. See, this strip here is just, you know, it's not perfect because you're going to be twisting it as well. And, okay, so go ahead and start doing that first. Just making some small strips. All right, so I've got some small strips kind of prepared. So now I'm going to start. Okay, so I'm going to show you that you can use glue if you want to use a little bit of glue. Put just a little teeny bit of glue, and as you're overlapping, just kind of overlap it over the glue. And as I said, you don't need to do that, but if you want to do that, that's fine. You know, it's up to you. But see what I'm doing? I'm wrapping. Okay, now what I'll do is I'll just wrap until I get to that glue area, and I'll just smash it down. And you know, smashing is not an artistic term, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so we're doing that, and then I'm going to take some other colors and just keep wrapping. Okay, so you probably should by now be getting the idea of what we're doing to create the form of the little wise woman goddess doll. Okay, so this, by the way, is based on the wisdom within you, but it's also based on the goddess of wisdom. So if you want to, which is Sophia, if you want to do that, the only thing I'll tell you about glue is that it gets sticky. So it's probably a good idea to keep a paper towel beside you in case you do get glue all over your hands. And that's really why I don't use glue, because I really feel that it totally deters it, you know, kind of interferes with my creativity. So I don't use glue. But anyway, it's up to you. Okay, so I'm going to start on the other side. And I learned this method of wrapping when I did a class, actually did a class with someone who taught how to do wire wrapping. And she used fabric and then she wrapped wire around the fabric. And we were making spirit animals. So really, I really learned this method through doing that class. And I didn't do a lot of this before that. So it's really interesting how you can learn something and then take it on to a next level and do something else with what you've learned. And I take classes from people that teach different things too. So I'm always expanding my own skills and different techniques. So now I use this method also when I teach blessing angels. I do wrapping as well in that, and I'll be showing that probably pretty soon with the holidays coming up. How to, in this case, I wrap a pipe cleaner and create a body form by using the same method, but wrapping a pipe cleaner with the fabric to create the body. And I'll be showing that later on. Okay, so you can also remember, you can also use your fibers. So have some fibers nearby, yarn or thread, because that's another way of securing your fabric. So we will probably also, kind of depends, because being this is a nature concept, this is a concept of, you know, mostly natural materials, we probably won't use wire in this one, but you can use like very soft wire to do the same method of wrapping, which is kind of cool. So if you want to do that, you can. But I don't know, this is going to be more of a natural doll, so based on primitiveness, I don't really think we will use wire. Okay, so I've reached a point where I could probably use a little bit of glue and tack this down and maybe start over with another piece of fabric. Okay, so the idea is to simply take the strips and wrap and overlap and overlap and wrap, and using a variety of material, including fabric strips and fibers and things that you have. And I put on the list, you know, different things that you can use, but I also gave you the opportunity to kind of choose what you wanted to choose in making your doll. So don't feel that you have to have a certain thing to make this. You don't. Whatever fabric you have, use it. Whatever fibers you have, use it. Even if you just, you know, have embroidery thread, that will work just as well. And any kind of fabric works. You know, as long as you can go to a thrift store and get very inexpensive fabric, and that's really where I get a lot of my fabric from, is because you know, you can find like an old, like a skirt or a blouse with lots of colors and use it for lots and lots of things. Okay, now this case what I did is I did use some glue and I wrapped that fabric fiber around, or the yarn around my fabric, and I secured it down with glue by just kind of smoothing the fibers down. Okay, so I'm gonna start again on the other side, and so the idea is to So by now you should have pretty much just about both arms covered with the fibers and the fabric. And you should probably go all the way up to the top because, I don't know, I just think it looks better when you actually do that. So, you know, I would cover the whole thing. I'd cover the whole arm. Now, sometimes, again, depending on what kind of doll it is, sometimes I will wrap fiber all the way up and then leave an area kind of hanging down. Or, you know, sometimes I actually just go all the way to the top, you know, depending on what kind of a doll it is. But, you know, I'm giving you this idea, but you can do whatever you want in making your doll. So we're going to just overlap all the way. I like it when it's covered. Okay, and then I wrap down, and this time I'm going to again take and put some glue on the end of the yarn. There's the end here. And I'm just going to take a little bit of glue. Because this is tacky glue, you don't need a huge amount. Well, that was a huge amount. Okay, so and then I've got this glue on here on the end, and I just smooth it down and go around and wrap, kind of like secure it with the glue. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing on the other arm using, you know, when I'm doing the doll, I sometimes have an idea of the theme that I'm going for, and sometimes I don't. But because this is fall, I'm using lots of fall colors, but I'm also using some real contrasting bright colors too. Only because I've got the yarn that's here. You know, I use what's on my table, and I don't really think about what I'm doing so much as I just, okay, whatever on the table is being used is collage material. So I've done that before. It's like, you know, I'd be working on something and I would have a few pieces of something left over from the project, and I'll just start using it for my, you know, whatever, the collage or fiber art or whatever I'm doing, because it's there. It actually disciplines you to use what you have rather than thinking you have to have a certain thing. When you use that method, it teaches you that, you know, sometimes you look at certain, you know, instructions in cloth, paper, scissors, or whatever, and you think, oh, I've got to have that particular stamp, or I've got to have that particular material, I've got to have that particular tool, or whatever, when really, if you think about it, you can actually improvise and use what you have. You know, see what you have already. Okay, so I've got some blue here, so I am actually going to put some blue on this orange as well, because there's too much orange there for one thing. And so I like the contrasting colors between the blue and the orange also, because, you know, orange is fall, but I also like the contrast of having blue over it so that it actually shows a little blue on the other side too. And if I have a long strip, I just keep wrapping all the way down to where it covers the strip that's kind of hanging out there. Now, I don't always do that. Sometimes I leave it so that it actually is a part of my embellishment, but in this case I'm going to actually wrap around it. And then again, my glue, and I'll just put the glue on the end like this. I'll be also showing a technique where you can do kind of the same thing, except again you use 3 pipe cleaners and you weave yarn and fabric strips around the 3 pipe cleaners, and you make these very interesting, what I call bee green bracelets. They're made out of all kinds of stuff to actually make really cool bracelets. I do that for the fall as well. So I might have a class on that if you're interested in learning that. I'll be posting it and probably teaching that later on, maybe like in November. I'll be teaching that. So that might be the next class I do is the big ring bracelets, because they're really cool to wear and they make a statement to the earth too. Okay, so by now you should have your whole entire form covered. You should have your whole branch covered. So you should have something that looks like this. All right, a little bit further back. Okay, you should have something that looks like this. Okay, so your whole entire branch should be thicker, and it should have more of a round look to it, and it should be covered with the fibers and fabric. All right, so if you have like a little piece that this is, you know, too long, you can cut it off. And then I'm going to show you a method where you just kind of fluff the fabric, but we'll do that, or fluff the fibers, but we'll do that later. But I kind of like that ragged, rugged look, you know, that raggy look that you have, because, I don't know, I think it's cooler when you have something that's not perfect. So this is not perfect, but we're going to do the next part of the instructions, and that is going to be your embellishments. Now you do need, oh, we're going to put the head on. So you should actually have your face on here too. Okay, so I'm going to use glue for that, and I'm going to use either tacky glue, or you can even use a glue gun, but in this case I don't have a glue gun, so I'm probably just going to use tacky glue. But now I'm probably going to put my face on last, because I'm going to be doing a lot of embellishment. So if you are, you know, right now, if you have your face and you haven't put it on yet, it probably would be a good idea to either put the face on and let it dry and, you know, really secure it onto the form, or use a hot glue gun or something a little bit stronger to put your face on. So your face is going to be right about here, okay? So your face is going to be there. So you definitely need to have your face glued and secure. So rather than doing that, I am going to continue with doing the embellishments, okay? So I'll be back, and again, I will be posting that in a couple minutes, or doing that in just a couple minutes. Okay, what I'm going to do is, you know, I'm going to demonstrate how you can use a face that you find in a magazine. Okay, you know, because there is another way of doing faces. I mean, if you can't afford to, you know, buy faces, or you don't want to use that particular face, or you don't have a means to purchase a face, or whatever, you know, there's different reasons. But even if you just want to do something a little bit different, I have done this one, and I did this one for a particular reason, because it actually does symbolize for me something that's more personal. And even the face is interesting, because that's Diane Keaton, and she's, you know, she's really one of my mentors as far as aging, because I think she's so cool. And I also did a word on the back. It says "Age Perfect," and there are butterfly wings and a ginkgo leaf that's in the back here, and a feather, and also a spiral that is very special to me. And I don't think you can see it, but there's a charm that actually says joy as well. So And I have red hair, so this symbolizes me again. I think that when you do something like this, it can sometimes be more fun and creative when you're forced into a situation where you have to think about using other stuff besides, as I said, besides what's in the instructions. So if you see someone that that says you have to have a face that you purchase, and you have to have, you know, in order to make the face, you have to have polymer clay, and you have to have, you know, a toaster oven to do the polymer clay, and molds to do the faces and all that kind of stuff. You don't, okay? All you need to do is really look for a face in the magazine that speaks to you, okay? So this is another face that spoke to me because it's to me it reminds me of an owl. And an owl is a very special animal spirit for me. It was all last year when I was doing the Wise Woman process that I did. It was an online course that I took, and I really had to focus in meditation and shamans journeys and stuff like that on the symbol of the owl. And so to me this is actually very significant. So because this is significant, I'm going to actually do this as my face. Now you can actually use it if you're not planning to you know, do anything but hang it. You're not going to wear it. You can just use it as it is. But if you want to put a cardboard backing on it, you can. And if you do that, that's fine, but you don't necessarily have to. Because this is a collage, I am just going to show you a simple way of doing a face. So this is my face, and again I'm taking a little bit of glue. Because it's paper, I don't need a huge amount of glue. And I'm going to put it right where the face is supposed to be. Right like that. Okay. So there's my face. Okay. Now, if I wanted to make this a very hard face, almost like a glass-like face, you can actually take a resin. Ice resin is a good thing to use. That's 2 parts. Or just get a resin at the at Lowe's or a hardware store, because they use this on tables as well. So a resin is a good thing because it actually will harden the surface and make it really glass-like. So if you want to do that, you can. In this case today, I'm not doing that. Okay. So the other thing that that is significant for me is a feather. So I am going to take a little bit of glue, and I'm going to put a feather like right on the side of this little form here. And what I'm going to do is use natural feathers. But again, I would advise you not to, you know, pick up feathers from outside because they can be diseased. So that's just something that I wouldn't do. Okay, so once I have the feathers on, you know, I do use peacock feathers, but in this case I think it looks better if she has feathers that that are more like an owl feather, I guess, you know. Anyway, not really an owl feather, but kind of cool, kind of like that. Anyway, okay, so now what I'm going to do is put some things that I found in nature. This is just a vine, and I think it's a cool little vine, so I'm going to stick that on with some tacky glue. And this is actually a vine, so I could even wrap it around the body form, depending on how soft it is. It can be soft enough to do this. I'm not real sure if it's going to work or not, but I'm going to try. Now, if you have an situation where you have something that kind of sticks up, you can again wrap something around it. So in that case, I'm going to just wrap some of my fibers around it. Let's see. Okay, Here's some fiber here. Okay, so I'm just going to wrap this to secure it. I'm just going to wrap it. So I'm wrapping the fiber around the vine, and then I'm taking the glue and gluing this piece of fiber here. I'm going to glue that down. Okay, so now I've got the fabric, I've got the little piece of vine, I have the feathers, and now I think there's, you know, something needs to be done at the top. So I think I might put, again, some more fibers around the top, and I'm going to take something that is like just a piece of yarn. Now this is an interesting piece of yarn because sometimes you can find yarn at Michael's that is a wool-based yarn, and in fact you can pull it apart and you can make some really interesting fibers by doing that. I've used this for hair. I've used this for hair on some of my dolls, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this, and I'm going to pull the strands apart, and again I'm going to use this to wrap around the top, and I think that'll be interesting just to do something with the top. Okay, so the top is just going to be kind of like taking and wrapping this around here, and then this around here, and then maybe something like this other strand here, I'll wrap around that too. So I twist it, and wrap. Now I'm not going to wrap it all the way up. I'm actually going to leave some of the areas showing because this is what I'm going to fluff. So once I get this on here, I'm going to actually fluff it. So probably could take and put a little bit of glue at the top, like right here, and take and just twist that, smooth it down with the glue, and then once that's done, wipe my hands, and now I could also come back and put some other things on here. Once this is dry, I might put another feather and maybe some beads. But this I'm going to show you, you can actually just kind of take and fluff the end of this. Okay, so now I've got this, and I've kind of fluffed the end of it and kind of separated of course you get glue on there, you just cut that. Alright, okay, so I have a little feather here, so actually it just kind of stuck on the end of it, so I might take and put that little feather at the top too, just to repeat the feathers at the bottom. Okay, so there we go. So now I might put something at the end. Now what will happen is sometimes, you know, you'll be working and you'll need to stop because there's some area that you need to let dry before you continue. So in this case I probably need to stop because when you put glue on, sometimes the glue gets kind of sticky, and you can actually kind of have a stopping place, or else you can actually do some of the back. Now I believe that pieces that you do should be completed with some kind of a back as well, and in other words, I'd always do some of a back piece. So in this case, I'm probably going to use something like, oh, maybe like a shell or a bead or something that I find that might be interesting. Oh, actually, I don't like that. I think I'll use these little seeds. That actually looks better. Okay. So, you know, you could also put, while the glue is real sticky, you can put other things on there. Make sure, though, that there's a sticky area. So the little object stays on there. You know, tacky glue is neat because it is tacky, but it is also very, very sticky. You know, but it's better than hot glue because hot glue burns you. Okay. All right. So now I think I'll put a little bit of something on top of the feather. This little thing here. Okay. So now I've got a little bit of a back piece, and again, it's repeating the feather idea. And over here, there might be, I might put something over here, maybe some beads. So I'm going to come back in just a couple minutes to show you what I did to finish this. All right? So again, as I said in the very beginning video, I am not showing you how to make my Wise Woman doll. I want you to make your own Wise Woman doll. You know, because this also has the little things around here, I might come back after this is completely secure. I might come back and put some little tiny pieces of feathers around this to really emphasize, emphasize that she is a bird of some sort. Okay. Now, as you're doing your Wise Woman doll, I want you to also listen to your intuition, because that's an important part of the process of making something that's really special to you. A long time ago, when people would make these things from nature, they would imbue a particular, I guess we call them intentions today, but they would imbue them with a thought or feeling or something they wanted, or maybe even empowerment. They would represent different things, and so if you see things that were created by artists, like sculptures and all kinds of things like masks and things like that, you know that they had a purpose. They had a purpose. Maybe it was a ceremonial thing, or it was something that represented a particular event in their life. So everything had a reason and a meaning. So one thing I think that we have lost in our own culture is seeing things and seeing objects and really making meaning from our own special life experiences and the events in our lives. And also just in nature, looking at nature and seeing the true beauty of nature, the true specialness in nature. And so because this symbolizes your own wise woman within, you need to listen to your own intuition as you're working with this, creating this object. Okay? So I'm going to come back again, and we're going to talk a little bit about, a little more about the importance of listening to the intuition, and using this in your work, in your inner work, if you would like. Okay. Now, I will tell you that there is another way of doing these dolls, and I will be later on showing that, and that is dry felting. And dry felting is actually a method where you felt on a piece of felt. And it's very easy, and you use a special kind of needle to poke the felt. It's not felt, it's actually wool. Poke the wool through the felt piece and create an interesting little shape that again represents the wise woman. I have done this for a class, and it's really cool. It's a really cool technique, and so I'll be doing this later on if you're interested in learning this. And the other thing is cool is that you can put a pin back on here and even wear them as a special little intuitive pin. Now, if you are familiar with women who run with the wolves, you'll remember one of the chapters that she wrote about was a story that was based on the doll that this girl had, and just, you know, she listened to, and the doll would tell her things. So it's kind of like having your own little intuitive doll. And again, I call it the inner wisdom doll. But it's the same, it's basically the same concept. So I'll be showing you how to do this later on. And as you can see, there's different ways of doing. This is a little doll that I did that I just used yarn to create a kind of little dress. And she's pretty small, so she was actually something that that you can actually make into a little pin. And this one is a doll that I made that is made out of strips, but it's a different kind of doll, so you can't really see the branch that's underneath it. But it's just lots and lots of fabric and pieces that I glued, and I think I actually glued these on. But anyway, this is a different type of doll because it's actually pieces of fabric, different kinds of fabric. Now this was a doll that was representing spring. I think this was like a little doll that I did for spring. So so you can already see the possibilities of doing these little dolls. And I will be posting. I'll be posting. I think I'm probably going to create a website or a blog. What I'll be posting is different dolls that you can create, including my my blessing angels, my blessing angel pins, my heirloom angels, and other kinds of art dolls that are possible that you could make. Okay, so again, I'm going to leave you, and I hope that you really enjoy this class, and I would really love to see your own your little wise woman dolls that you created. Please post them on Facebook, post them on the wise woman section in Facebook, and what is it called? Wise Woman Art. Yeah, Wise Woman Art. It's a group actually on Facebook, and let me see what you've done with this class, and hopefully you will join other things that I do as well, because I'm going to be showing you how to do the bracelets